Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the We Know Traitors podcast over here on RHAP. I'm your host, the Duke of Deception, here to talk with the latest person banished from the castle in what I'm only going to deem as unexpected. I genuinely did not see that happening the entirety of the episode. Joined here today with one and only Stephen Colletti. Stephen, how are you doing?
Yeah, we're having some tough dreams from being back in the castle and what happened. The sleep is a little lackluster, but other than that, we're doing all right. We are still actually alive.
We are absolutely. Stephen, what went wrong? Actually, yeah, let's start with that because I feel like for me, from the outside looking in, seems like you were a faithful, you were hard cleared by everybody, and then you decided to serve people turkey at the banquet, and then things went south. What was that all about?
All right, hard-hitting details here. I feel like we gotta straighten this out. It was a roast. I was serving the roast. Dorinda was actually serving the turkey. So more to the point of
Okay.
how ridiculous it is that Natalie was totally jumping on the fact that I served her roast and multiple other people, while also other people were being served food. So that was something that was frustrating. I will say it was actually the tarot cards in that moment, even though I wasn't the first to touch them and I wasn't the last. While it was stupid of me to touch them, I felt like that was going to be the end of me. So, look, I wasn't surprised that it came up later. Eric actually says it at the banishment, but I didn't buy it then because I put up a great case of, look, that was all. There's no way it would have been all that. Yes, it's a distraction. Yes, you can look at it, but look at the entirety of what I've been doing up to this point and strategizing with who and calling out certain traders at certain times. So, yeah, that was tough to see. I think ultimately, for me, the most frustrating part is Johnny and I had breadcrumbs from Candiace, and we just couldn't
Hmm.
put them together, him and I. And I think if we had more of a conversation together before that round table and call each other out and look each other in the eye and explain our positions, maybe we would have figured out what was really going on there. But yeah, ultimately, Candice's vote for Rob really felt like she was just desperate and trying to deflect away from all traders. So she went after a quiet one, if you will, a quiet person. And yeah, that in hindsight, that's some of the more frustrating moments. I also feel like I got too comfortable with the Johnny vote at the end. I
Hmm.
was really convinced, like yourself, through that entire day that it was going to be Johnny. And a lot of the moves, even at the mission, it was like, oh, Johnny and Tara, they're just adding more fuel to the fire. But I did not expect that Natalie was gonna, yeah, she was gonna flip. So that was a big moment. Was her gut apparently that she was convinced that it was me.
Yeah, it felt like in addition to the card that you mentioned and the banquet night, also with Lisa handing you the gold over for you to get the chance of the dagger, that seemed to be something that people were looking at. Ultimately, who do you think would you, if you had to assign someone responsibility, who do you think had the biggest hand in your name becoming a bigger name for the banishments?
Natalie, yeah, I feel I was joking that I was going to crawl over a table and offer her some probiotics and prebiotics to get her gut checked based off of what she was so convinced as me being a traitor because of her gut, and it just the evidence was weak, and I always had a really good explanation that had no holes in it, and one of them being just actually what you mentioned. Dorinda put up this idea that Lisa just randomly walked over to me and put gold in my box. And that's not what happened at all. I went over to Lisa as soon as she got to the top of the hill. I actually knew that Colton and Dorinda had kind of an alliance on the gold. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do that with Lisa. I didn't vote for her at the last round table. She's going to think that she's protecting another vote for herself. She's desperate, so I'm going to go to her. And so then she decided, yeah, and she came over and gave him and dropped him in my box. So I also explained that at the roundtable multiple times and was very clear about it, and so people understood that. But Natalie went with some very questionable evidence pieces that that were pretty frustrating to see. So I think with her, once the traders saw that Johnny and Tara and of course Natalie, that's three, they add the two of them, then I'm toast. So yeah, that was the big moment.
Who was your closest ally in the castle in this, specifically the last couple of rounds here?
Yeah, at this point, Mark and Kristen, I was very close with. I was getting close with Tara actually. I had spoken to her privately when there was heat going on Johnny, and I
Hmm.
wanted to tell Tara that I felt like we're playing the game in a similar way. We're trying to figure it out. We felt like we could be wrong, but we're trying our best, but we're not going to necessarily be one of the louder voices in the room. So I really, we really got along in that way, and felt like we had a connection. So I wanted to go to her and say, hey, I don't know how much you're really putting your faith and trust in Johnny, but I want to trust you. So, and look, at the end of the day, she of course is going to choose Johnny over me. But what I underestimated is they had a massive advantage going into this game. The two of them, knew that they were going to be in the game together and that they were going to be faithfuls, and that you've got somebody you can trust 100%. So I don't blame her. At the end of the day, she's of course going to go for Johnny. And you know what? Yeah, you got to tip your cap to them. You get banished because of a couple of Olympians that worked together, and got Natalie. So yeah, it's hats off to them.
Yeah, I'm interested with you, Stephen, because I do know you mentioned in the preseason that this was something new to you coming into this competitive reality TV realm. What was your overall experience? Did you A, like it? B, would you recommend it? C, would you do it again?
I absolutely enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it, and I hope I get to do it again. At the end of the day, it was unfamiliar territory for me, so I was a little shy coming into it. Also, I had done Laguna Beach. That was my reality experience, 20 years
Hmm.
ago, and it left a bad taste in my mouth just because, look, I was a young kid, and you felt taken advantage of in a way. And so I was really scared that that was going to happen again here. In fact, I had a little bit of a moment at the very end once I was had done my final interviews, and was getting ready to leave the castle, and talking to one of the producers. I had a pretty emotional moment, and just told them. I was almost like, all right, thank you for having me here, and like, please don't make me look stupid, which is the to me the kid from Laguna Beach that felt like he was taken advantage of, and the story that they decided to tell for us in their way back then, that was wrong in some ways. And so I think that that was tough, and it left its mark on me, and you saw some of that coming up by the time I was done with the game. And you're very emotional about being out, and so I was a little nervous about that. But then you see what actually was put together, and in the cut. And remember, I had to remember, what, you did mature 20 years here. You're no longer a kid in high school. And look, the show is so great because the focus is the game, right? The integrity of the
Hmm.
game, and the stakes that are there, and then having these people interact within that the relationships and what's formed there, it comes secondary. And so what they show there is truthful. And yeah, I had such a great experience on the show, and I'm very impressed with what they've done with it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Stephen. I have one more question for you here, and then we can wrap it up. You were someone who, in the preseason, I also jotted down, seemed to be disinterested at the notion of being a traitor. If you were to get a second chance, you put in the cloak on, man. What are we saying?
100%. They're having so much fun up there. It took a
Hmm.
couple episodes for me to be like, dude, you blew it. So funny. I said that at the end, getting banished. I was like, you know what? You blew it, Steven. You should have been a traitor. But they cast great traitors for this season. I think they knocked it out of the park there. Some great personalities. I didn't want to be a traitor out the gate, but I was putting it
Hmm.
out there that I would have enjoyed being recruited. And that's because I knew I needed to get to know the game a little bit before I took that leap, be in the game, feel it, get to know people, and not carry the weight of being a trader up to that point. But look, I also learned once I jumped in the game, everything is very intense. You're carrying a lot of weight of, trying not to look suspect yourself, trying to, contribute where you can, but also, are you going to get murdered? That's totally out of your hands. So, yeah, there's a lot of weight being carried no matter what you're doing in the game. And yeah, the traders, they're having a blast. So I would have enjoyed that from the jump.
Well, Stephen, it was an absolute pleasure getting to talk to you here. I'm glad you had such a positive experience with the show. Hope you get your chance at not even, I'm not going to say redemption. Hope you get your chance at the cloak. We'll see.
I
We'll
appreciate
manifest.
that. Hey, you got to
Yeah.
give Rob some grief for me, right? The fact that, I thought we had a pretty good alliance in the castle. I felt like I could trust him, but he doesn't show up for our interview today. What's he doing? Flying back from the reunion?
Is that what he's doing? Yeah, I don't know. All I know, Steven, is his loss is my gain. We can be allies now. So
I wish the reunion was tonight, because then I'd go after him for not showing up for this interview.
I have a feeling if it was tonight, he would be here. That's just a hunch, though. I think it would have been here.
Tables are flipping. Next time,
Mm-hmm.
Rob.
There you go. All right, Simon. Thank you so much. You have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Nice chatting with you, man.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.